The film begins with a group of people gathered at the city hall, including Governor Sandra Correa. However, there's a surprising twist. The governor is under suspicion for mishandling state funds meant for purchasing hospital equipment for the community. A few days earlier, members of the Special Armed Division, referred to as the Die Folks, paid a visit to the governor's luxurious residence. Their purpose was not just a social call. They conducted a thorough search and arrested him. The task of investigating fell on two agents, Miguel and Edu. Afterward, they took the governor to an incredibly intense interrogation room, where they presented substantial evidence of his financial wrongdoing. It resembled a real-life detective showdown. In a recorded conversation, the governor openly declared that he wouldn't hesitate to harm anyone who revealed his misdeeds, whether it was to the public or the authorities. He even attempted to use money as a bargaining tool to persuade the prosecutor's office to go easy on him. It's clear that the government is entangled in corruption. Following the chaos, the governor's lawyer paid him a visit. He inquired about the governor's family's enjoyment of their vacation in Miami. The lawyer then informed him that he had been in contact with the prosecutor's office, and the governor would be spending some time at home while awaiting his trial. Governor Correa thought he might soon be out of trouble, and instructed his lawyer to prepare his personal security detail because he had a feeling someone might come after him due to the financial scandal. As it turned out, the prosecutor's office lacked sufficient evidence to keep him in custody, so they allowed him to return home with a condition. He had to stay there temporarily while they continued their investigation. Meanwhile, Miguel and Edu, those day agents, received permission from their superiors to return home. When Miguel arrived home, he found his young daughter sleeping on the couch. He gently moved her to her bed, and she briefly woke up to bid him goodnight, expressing pride in her dad for apprehending the wrongdoers. The following day, Miguel had the idea to take his daughter to a soccer game. However, his ex-wife arrived to pick up their child. When he arrived at the office, his superiors delivered some unsettling news. They were disbanding his team, and the entire case involving Governor Correa's financial misconduct was being transferred to the military police. Miguel had been working on that case for months, and this decision really infuriated him. He disagreed with his superiors, but he had no choice but to accept it and leave the office. Edu, his friend and colleague, reminded him about the promise he had made to his daughter about the soccer game. So Miguel hurried to meet her, and she was waiting with his ex-wife. Despite being slightly behind schedule, his daughter was thrilled to watch the football game with her dad. They both put on Brazil jerseys, snapped a quick photo, and then rushed to the stadium on foot. However, an unexpected and horrifying incident occurred on their way to the game. Suddenly, someone shot Miguel's daughter, shocking them all. Miguel rushed her to the hospital for immediate medical attention. The nurses acted swiftly, taking his daughter to the emergency room and instructing Miguel to wait outside. Anxious and worried, Miguel couldn't help but notice the hospital hallway filled with patients who appeared to be in need of better care. It seemed evident that the hospital was lacking sufficient funds or adequate facilities. Miguel discovered his daughter lying weak right in front of the operating room. Unfortunately, the hospital was overwhelmed and lacked the necessary equipment, forcing her to wait for her turn. It was a devastating situation, and due to the delay in treatment and the shortage of blood, Miguel's daughter didn't survive. It was a heart-wrenching loss. Shortly after, Miguel's ex-wife arrived at the hospital, and she was disheartened after learning about their little girl's passing. Edu felt deep sympathy for what had happened to Miguel's daughter, and he expressed a desire to help find the person responsible for shooting her. However, Miguel had no idea about the shooter's whereabouts because the incident had occurred near a cluster of buildings, making it difficult to pinpoint the culprit's location. Meanwhile, Miguel was profoundly upset about the hospital's inadequate resources and equipment, believing that better facilities and tools could have saved his daughter's life. He firmly believed that nobody should endure neglect and suffering until it's too late. Amidst his grief, Miguel learned that Governor Correa had been acquitted of the financial misconduct that had previously embroiled him in legal trouble. Correa boldly announced his candidacy for the presidency, making grand promises of increasing the budget for healthcare and public hospitals to improve the lives of Brazilians. Miguel's anger towards Correa was beyond measure. He saw through the governor's deceitful words and empty promises. Fueled by his frustration, he joined a group of protesters at the city hall and faced off with the police. Miguel adopted a stealthy approach, donning a mask, and someone in the crowd captured it all on video. After defeating Correa's bodyguards, Miguel finally confronted the corrupt governor at City Hall. He did what he believed was necessary and put an end to the governor, who had indirectly caused his daughter's tragic demise. It was a dramatic showdown. The following day, Gomez gathered with his political associates and urged them to support his son's bid for the presidency as a replacement for Correa. Their reaction revealed their surprise, as Gomez's son didn't appear particularly suited for the role of president. When they voiced their reservations, Gomez grew visibly upset and threatened to expose the corrupt activities of these politicians to Minister Regina. A few days later, Miguel made the decision to return to work. He realized he couldn't continue drowning in sorrow after the loss of his daughter. Miguel and Edu were assigned the task of investigating the turmoil that had erupted during the protest. Their team succeeded in apprehending individuals who appeared to be the masterminds behind the chaos. During this process, Miguel recognized one of the suspects, possibly from his own actions during the protest when he was undercover. Miguel volunteered to interrogate this woman, who turned out to be a programmer named Nina. Here's the twist. Nina was aware of Miguel's involvement in confronting the police during the protest and claimed to possess video evidence of his actions on her phone. Faced with limited options, Miguel reluctantly agreed to allow Nina to leave and went to retrieve her phone before his colleagues became suspicious. Now, Nina expressed her desire to assist Miguel in delving into the shady dealings involving the misappropriated medical funds and hospital equipment. Realizing he couldn't tackle this alone, Miguel agreed. Nina possessed valuable skills and successfully hacked into Korea's personal laptop. Together, they uncovered significant incriminating information about the individuals involved in the financial misconduct. Shockingly, it turned out to be none other than Gomez and his political associates. Without hesitation, Miguel prepared himself to go after each of these corrupt officials and politicians who were also responsible for his daughter's tragic death. Miguel continued to wear the same mask as his disguise, and it became a dramatic showdown as he took down corrupt politicians one by one. The news of these politicians meeting their demise began to circulate, and Nina, who was aware of Miguel's involvement, approached her boss with a question. Could the person responsible for eliminating these corrupt officials be seen as a kind of hero? Later, Miguel visited Nina at her workplace and requested her assistance in uncovering the source of funding for these dubious politicians' campaigns. Initially hesitant, Nina's stance changed when Miguel offered to help reduce her mother's prison sentence. Her mother had been wrongly accused of something she didn't do. During her visit to the jail, Nina talked to her mother about the importance of truth. However, her mother had a different perspective, suggesting that truth is subjective and can vary from person to person. After the conversation with her mother, Nina decided to assist Miguel in identifying the person who had financed Korea's campaign and other unscrupulous politicians. It turned out to be none other than Gomez. Nina put her hacking skills to work and tapped into a surveillance camera system in a building where Gomez was scheduled to meet Regina. Meanwhile, Miguel didn't want to raise suspicions by frequently disappearing. He pretended to be assisting Edu, who was investigating a serial killer known as the Awakener. This killer was renowned for taking out corrupt officials with precision, earning his nickname because of his extraordinary skills in special forces tactics. He expertly handled weapons, left no traces behind, and eliminated targets with a single lethal strike. Miguel realized that his friend Edu was starting to suspect something. To divert Edu's attention, Miguel suggested that Edu take a break and temporarily suspend his work. After briefly assisting Edu, Miguel went off to continue his own mission. On the other hand, Edu managed to identify the next target of the Awakener, who turned out to be Minister Mart Regina. Edu tried to contact Miguel to warn him and urged him to hurry to where Minister Regina was meeting with Gomez. However, for some unknown reason, Edu couldn't reach Miguel, so he decided to go alone. When Edu arrived at the scene, he finally came face to face with the Awakener, who shockingly turned out to be Miguel himself. Miguel had no intention of fighting Edu and attempted to flee, but he was shot. At that moment, he decided to abandon his mission to eliminate Regina and made his escape. Miguel encountered Na, who helped him tend to his wound. The day after, Miguel and Edu shared their investigation findings with all their colleagues. They presented solid evidence demonstrating that Minister Regina had collaborated with Gomez, the individual who had financed the campaigns of those corrupt politicians. Miguel, Edu, and their investigative team decided to delve deeper into Minister Regina's activities. However, their higher-ups arrived shortly after and halted all the progress they had made. Essentially, they were ordered to stop meddling in Minister Regina's affairs. This strongly suggested that their bosses might have been influenced by bribes from Gomez. Miguel was quite infuriated by their superior's decision, so he took matters into his own hands to confront Gomez. Meanwhile, at Gomez's residence, he was having dinner with influential government officials who held significant power. Gomez's son was also present, looking somewhat uneasy around these influential figures. He took a break to talk to his mother, expressing his feeling of not being fully prepared for the presidency. However, he didn't want to disappoint his father, so he decided to go along with it. Unbeknownst to them, Miguel was already in motion and deliberately took the life of Gomez's son, aiming to compel Gomez to confess to his misdeeds. Shockingly, Gomez used his son's death as an opportunity to garner sympathy from the public. He nominated himself as the new presidential candidate, replacing his late son. Gomez had also been conducting an investigation into the deaths of his colleagues. His lawyer, a man named Sequeira, looked into it and eventually discovered that the Awakener had a partner. He believed Nina's boss was this partner, so he took the drastic step of eliminating him. Shortly after, Nina arrived at her workplace and found her boss dead. Terrified, she rushed to Miguel's hideout, unaware that she was being trailed by covert agents. These secret agents stormed Miguel's hideout and initiated an attack. In the ensuing chaos, Sequeira took Nina hostage and struck a deal with Miguel to spare her life. He ordered Miguel to eliminate another presidential candidate named Julia Amado. Miguel had no choice but to comply with Sequeira's request to save Nina. Before long, the police arrived at Miguel's hideout because neighbors had reported hearing gunshots. Edu and his investigative team, who were also on the case, were stunned to discover that the awakener was none other than Miguel, his best friend. He realized this when he came across Miguel's cell phone at the scene. Edu knew that the awakener was targeting Gomez, so he rushed to the location of a presidential candidate debate. Miguel was also en route to eliminate Julia, an honest politician, at the debate. When Miguel arrived at the debate site, he was ready to harm Julia, despite her integrity. However, just as he was about to pull the trigger, Edu intervened and halted him. They engaged in a fierce battle, but both were trying to avoid killing each other. Edu pleaded with Miguel to cease his actions, as in Edu's view, Miguel was becoming no different from the corrupt individuals he was pursuing. However, Miguel appeared indifferent. On another note, Nina, who was held captive by Sequeira, saw an opportunity when he let his guard down and fought back until she seriously injured Sequeira. Miguel ended up getting arrested for the murders of the corrupt officials. Edu hoped to change Miguel's mindset, so he brought in Miguel's ex-wife. She attempted to persuade him by emphasizing that their daughter would be deeply embarrassed if she discovered her father's actions. She believed their daughter would not be proud of him. While in prison, Miguel caught wind of news on TV that Gomez was gaining more public support due to his son's death. People sympathized with him and rallied behind him. Just as Miguel was about to be questioned, one of his superiors, Deputy D, attempted to eliminate him. However, Miguel turned the tables and took down the man. Miguel realized that Ana Gomez was on the verge of becoming president, so he executed a daring escape from prison, armed himself with weapons and ammunition, and prepared for revenge. Miguel raced to the Parliament building where Gomez and his political associates were celebrating their temporary victory over Julia. Without hesitation, Miguel stormed in and eliminated all of Gomez's men and colleagues. When he finally reached Gomez in his office, Gomez attempted to justify that corruption would persist due to human greed, but Miguel had reached his breaking point. He shot Gomez dead. After Miguel killed Gomez, he found himself surrounded by Gomez's henchmen, all pointing their guns at him. However, Miguel wasn't foolish. He had a plan all along. He had planted a bomb in his car and activated the detonator. In an instant, the entire building exploded, collapsing it along with Miguel inside. The following day, when the police and forensic experts examined the crime scene, all they discovered was the mask worn by the Awakener. There was no sign of Miguel's body. The movie concludes with a shot of the Awakener preparing to take a shot from the top of a building. It remains a mystery whether this Awakener is Miguel, who somehow survived the explosion, or someone else who has taken up the mission to eliminate corrupt individuals. So now you know, never bring a bomb to a gunfight, especially when looking for revenge.